Hey guys, it's Brett. Thanks for stopping by my channel. So it is the end of November, time for a November wrap up. What I liked, what I loved, what I thought sucked. No, I actually didn't think anything sucked this month. So that's great. And let's get to it. So I read 10 books this month. I really, for the most part, liked everything I actually read, which is not rare, but it's good. I feel like I did a good balance of nonfiction as well as fiction titles. I probably would have liked to have done more nonfiction if I could have, but I just didn't get around to all of it. I spent a large part of the beginning of the month trying to get through Our Share of Night, which comes out, I believe, in March in the States. And I had got a copy because I was hearing so many things about this book before once it was published in Europe, and I thought I really want to read this. And as good as I thought some of it is, I was just really struggling, and it's massive. So much like I've done with, or I did with Hanya Yanagihara's To Paradise, I've put it down for a moment. I plan to eventually get back to it. I don't know when that's going to be, but I just felt like I was working too hard to get through something. I was also doing a buddy read with it at the same time, and I should say, the two other people I was doing it with, both also bailed out. So I don't know if that, I don't know if that speaks well for the book or if it's just strictly the length. Anyway, moving on. So let's go over what I did read. First off, I absolutely adored this book, The Soul of an Octopus by Montgomery. I spoke about this in my last post, frankly, because I just got Montgomery's older book, The Good Good Pig. The Soul of an Octopus, in this nonfiction book, Montgomery spends a lot of time in Boston at the aquarium there, getting to know the octopus that reside there, but becomes obsessed with them, as one is wont to do with an octopus, and even goes as far as to take up scuba diving. It is so good, so fantastic. First of all, I'm just so incredibly fascinated by these creatures, what they are capable of doing. I just have to read to you some of these things about them. Okay, so here we go. Here's some fun facts about octopus you may not know. 3/5 of octopus's neurons are not in the brain, but are in the arms. If an arm is severed from an octopus's body, the arm will often carry on as if nothing has happened for several hours. I thought that was a little interesting fact. With an octopus, the opportunity for misunderstanding is greatly magnified. A lion is a mammal like us. An octopus is put together completely differently, with 3 hearts, a brain that wraps around its throat, and a covering of slime instead of hair. Even their blood is a different color from ours. It's blue, because copper, not iron, carries its oxygen. Those are just 2 little fun facts for you today about the octopus. My dog is about to bark. Hold on, there he is. Meet Bo. Bo, say hello. Bo. This is the time of day where my dog begins to bark at all of the people going along the street with their pets in the afternoon. This is also his subtle reminder to me that he needs to be taken out. All right, let's continue, shall we, before he starts to bark. Speaking of animals, Horse by Geraldine Brooks. I really love this. I just finished this over the holiday break. Horse is set around Lexington, who was historically one of the most decorated and prize-winning horses in history. Also became an incredible stud and sired a bunch of prize-winning horses himself. But the story is not about the horse so much as surrounding events with the horse. One of them, and the central story in this, is about his groom who's enslaved and who basically is there when he's born, when the horse is a foal, up through his death. That to me was the best part about this book, and I could have lived there the whole time. It moves back and forth from the 1800s up through the almost 2020, and it's some of the more contemporary stuff that wasn't as successful to me. But what I have to give it up to Geraldine Brooks is it's an incredibly researched book. It's an incredibly thorough book, not just about horses and horse racing in that world, but a lot about slavery, racism. It's a really, really, really interesting, well done series of stories that ultimately are all going to come together, and it never feels like it's convenient or manipulated. The way that she brings the stories together is fantastic. My one complaint is on one of the contemporary stories. There's an incident that takes place towards the end of the book that I just felt, I didn't know if I felt it was necessary, and it's a racial incident that I just didn't think it needed to necessarily be in the book, and I'm not quite sure what she was trying to achieve with it. And if you've read the book, and you might know what I'm talking about, I don't want to spoil anything. So anyway, but overall, I thought this was a really, really, really terrific book that I haven't seen, at least on Instagram, or even frankly what I've seen on BookTube, a lot of people talking about. So it's good. Dirtbag, Massachusetts by Issac Fitzgerald. This is a biography that I didn't know Issac Fitzgerald at all before. And it's all about his life growing up in New England. From his kind of very rough childhood, his parents were, for all intents and purposes, abusive. He went to a boarding school. I thought this was great. I listened to it on audio, which he narrated, and I thought it was, he's a fantastic storyteller. It's quick, it's an easy read, totally enjoyed it. Sea of Tranquility, I spoke about this briefly yesterday or my last post, because I was about to finish it. Well, in fact, I have finished it now. This, to me, was just fantastic. Emily St. John Mandel, I bow down before you. I think she is a genius writer. Basically, the only way I can really, truly describe my feeling when I finish this book is the exploding head emoji. Could you read this book without reading the two previous books? The two previous being Station 11 and more recently The Glass Castle? Probably. I don't think that it would be as fulfilling as an experience, especially The Glass Castle, because there is a character from The Glass Castle who is one of the centerpieces of The Glass Castle who kind of kicks off this story. So it certainly has a lot more resonance if you are familiar with that book and have read that book as well. This one deals with a series of stories that all kind of come together, that starts in the late 1800s, that goes all the way up into 2022, when the moon has been colonized. People are still living on Earth, but many people have fled the Earth. There's been multiple pandemics. There is an author who's very kind of meta and auto-fiction-y that seems like it could be Emily St. John Mandel, who is on the middle of an author tour when a pandemic breaks out. It's about, I don't want to give too much away, but it is, she is taking big ideas about existence, about time travel, about who we are, and takes huge swings and connects 100%. This is something that I think would be an amazing book club book to discuss with a bunch of people. Certainly when I finished it, already my head is swimming, and I feel like as much as I never reread a book, this is something I'm going to want to reread, because I know there's stuff, A, that I absolutely missed, and B, stuff that completely went over my head. It's fantastic. Fantastic. One of my favorites of the year, for sure. Okay, genderqueer. This was one of those things I threw in my TBR at the last second because I think I might have spoken about this before. This is one of the books that, with all of the outcries in schools across the country and school board meetings with parents wanting to ban books, this is one of the number one banned books that has been placed on those lists. So I wanted to read it for two reasons. I wanted to see what all the hype was about in terms of the complaining about the book, and I wanted to just get a sense of it. Well, this is what I've kind of come to the conclusion of. I certainly think that this is a book that would be great for a late middle or high school kid. I hardly believe, even as a graphic novel, which is, what this is, a young child is going to be checking this out of their high school, out of their library, and I don't even think it would be available. I would wager a bet in like an elementary school library. This is what I'll say about it. I found it fascinating because it was one of the first things I've read that really gave a kind of concrete and clear explanation about what it's like for people who don't feel they fit in to the kind of binary of being cisgendered male or female, completely separate from sexuality, just in terms of gender identity. And for that, it's a fantastic, fantastic, and I think necessary book, especially for young adults who might be struggling with who they are. So I think it's so unfortunate that this thing has been removed and has a stigma attached to it, because I absolutely think this is something that could help someone at least look at it and say, hey, I recognize this. I feel this way too. So, The Haunting of Hajji Hotak by Jamil Kochai. I feel like in some ways I spoke about this before. Maybe, this was one of the shortlisted National Book Award books. It's a fantastic collection. It's all set around people of Afghanistan, some of them living in the States, some of them in Afghanistan. Short stories, some of them are linked. I would say 70% of them I thought were out of this world. There were a few that were less than, but that's for me in a short story collection. I don't know. I can't remember the last time if ever, I've read a short story collection where I was like, every single one I loved. But even the ones that weren't as good are still great. And the way that he constructs stories, his boundless creativity was mesmerizing to me. And the way that he would approach his narratives was so creative. So again, I would highly recommend this book. I thought it was terrific. Another shortlisted book for the National Book Award was All This Could Be Different by Sarah Thankam Matthews. This is kind of a pretty straightforward narrative about a young immigrant woman during the Obama administration who lives in Milwaukee. She is a lesbian and trying to kind of find her way with her group of friends, working in a job that she's not making money at. I thought it was a really engaging narrative. I thought it was a fantastic collection of characters. I'm really interested to see what she comes up with next. It's very smart, but I don't know that I was like, wow. I certainly didn't think, wow, this should have won the National Book Award. And I haven't read all the books, and I haven't even read the Tess Gunty book yet. I thought this was a really good narrative, but I wasn't like, blew me away, fantastic, have to get this. Did I enjoy it? Certainly. Stoneblind by Natalie Haynes. This is the Medusa story told by Natalie Haynes, who wrote 1,000 Ships. As I said in my Instagram review, Natalie Haynes is becoming like the Gregory Maguire of Greek mythology. I liked this a lot. My one complaint with this book was for Medusa's story. Medusa is probably in 35% of the book. There's a lot focusing on Perseus and also all the various gods and their machinations, which of course have a direct effect on what happens to Medusa. So I understood why it was all in there. I just think I was a little, it felt a little misleading that says it's Medusa's story when we were spending a lot of time with, you know, you had Persephone, you had Perseus, you have Zeus and Athena, and so it's good, and I don't want to take that away from it, but it's also very funny. Haynes writes these gods and goddesses the way I think we've all now been kind of led to believe that they were written, which is they're petulant children who don't care and they want their own ways and they get jealous and mad, and mortals are mere playthings for them. So it's not at all a dour and heavy retelling. In fact, it's quite light. It's quite funny. It would probably be something that could be, if done correctly, a great movie. So I would recommend this. You know, not the greatest thing I've ever read, but totally, totally, totally enjoyable. The other thing I read, nonfiction book, was Colton Haynes' Miss Memory Lane. Colton Haynes was the star, one of the stars of MTV's first kind of breakout television scripted hit, Teen Wolf. He then went on to spend years on the CW show Arrow. This was his story, basically growing up in a very poor part of California with a father who abandoned them, an abusive mother. A lot of it is really centered. You know, this came out a few months before Matthew Perry's book came out. Both of them deal heavily with addiction. The other thing Colton was facing, though, was that he was also in the industry and was closeted. Very much wanted to come out, despite the fact that his representatives were always telling him, you absolutely cannot do that. You guys, I thought it was very well written. I think it's incredibly honest. I thought it was incredibly sad. And I kept thinking the whole time, gosh, I want nothing more than to be able to give this kid a hug. I'm so glad that he got out of, pulled himself out of his addictions and has kind of recovered and is on the road to recovery, because otherwise it would have been troubling, to say the least. But between this and the Jeanette McCurdy book earlier this year, it is the entertainment business sucks, especially for youngsters. That does. It's really brutal. So anyway, but kudos to Colton for getting it together and moving on with his life in an honest and out front way. The last book, and I'm not going to actually feature it, was Demon Copperhead. I actually said it right from the Maia 5 million times when I was calling it the wrong things, by Barbara Kingsolver. The reason I'm not featuring it is because currently there is, and I'm sure some of you may know this, Harper Collins is in a labor dispute with their employees. So they have gone on strike. And so the employees of HarperCollins have asked social media people not to be promoting their books during this time, in an effort to have solidarity so they can get a better and fair wages. So I think we're now on day 14 or 15 of the strike, which does not seem to be any end in sight. So I will simply say I liked the book, but I'm not going to go any further than that. And I'm sure if you are interested, you can go online, and I will find the link and put it below if you want to see more information on what's happening with that. So there you go. Those are the 10 books I read this month. Tomorrow or the following day, I'm going to post another video about what I plan to read for December. So please check that out. I will, give you a little news flash that a lot of it's just simply going to be my the remainder of my 10 before the end, which right now is 6 3/4, because I did start Babel, which was one of my 10 before the end. I've just started that though. So that's going to be the bulk of what I'm going to read, but I have a few books that I've pulled to balance it out with, and so I'll be going over that next. As always, thank you for stopping by. Like and subscribe if you like this. And please let me know if there's any of these that you have read, what your thoughts are on them, if you have read them, if something looks interesting to you. And thanks for stopping by.